What is going on, everyone? AP over here at Run Pier Sports, bringing to you. We got the Lineup Builder Show. I'm here with my guy Jordan. We're going to be covering the MLB slate, taking you guys all the way up to lock. Jordan, what is going on, my man? How are you doing today?
I'm good. I love these like middle of the week split slate MLB days. I know some people don't like it. Maybe if you don't like the smaller slates as much, but it's always fun. I guess today we've only got the 2 night games, so not really the true split slate. But I like the days where we get like 4 or 5 games on the early, 5-6 games on the main slate. You get to build and research for 2 different baseball slates on the same day. So I guess today not a perfect example of that, but we got 4 games coming up here. It should be fun to break it down a little bit.
Yeah, very good. I love anytime we have action all day. I'm going to be a fan of that. And we have a lot of action. We have the PGA Championship going on right now. My boy Keegan Bradley, 2 under, looking good. JT's up there. The course looks beautiful, looks awesome. We got day baseball. I mean, like what more can you ask for? And then we got an awesome showdown slate tonight with Denver and the Lakers. And it was an awesome night for Run Pure Sports a few nights ago when we got that first game won. Shout out to Rubio, K. Fallick, multiple members, absolutely crushed it, shipped that slate. They shipped it with a 0. So once MLB locks up, I think we head over to NBA. We touch on that a little bit because there's so many interesting concepts that you can run on these showdown slates where we have a good idea where production and what the game script is going to look like.
Yeah, definitely. Game 1, before we jump in, I think that was one of the best basketball games I've ever watched. And I know awesome. not a neutral fan here, so I very invested.
Little
in
bias.
Oh God, it was so good. I was so nervous in the final 5 minutes of those games. Austin Reeves hits that 3 from the side there and put the Lakers within 3. I thought we were going to lose the game. 21 points up, like in the third quarter at one point, and I was like, we're going to drop this game. But it was an awesome first game there.
I mean, you got the MVP, Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
And Embiid, he won the regular season MVP this year. But what Jokic is doing right now is, I mean, I don't have any words. It's like insane how good he has been. But I could go down like a rabbit hole, a tangent. Let's dive in. Let's do a couple things. Let's compare. Let's do our base build. Mm-hmm. Let's run it quick. We don't need 1,500. Let's just run like 500 or whatever. Let's do it off Sabersim projections, then switch over to RPS projections just to see if there are any noticeable differences with these base builds.
Perfect. Yeah. While this is building here, we'll give this a second. Should go pretty quick here. But what we're doing here, right? I always want to mention this while this build's running. We do this every single time. We're just running it with the basic projections, seeing what the average projection's like, right? This is what every other optimizer in the industry, all the people in your contest you're competing with against are going to build their lineups like this. So it's a tool, 1, to get familiar with the slate, and 2, to see what other people are doing here. And I love the idea here of doing this with multiple projection sets. We do it with the Sabersim set. We can do it with the RPS projections here. If you've got other projections at your disposal as well, you get an opportunity to see what people building with those projections are going to get in their build. So I love this idea here. We'll let this spin here for maybe another 10, 15 seconds here, just so we can make sure we get to everything here today. I'm going to go ahead and stop it right about, let's get a couple.
There we go. We've been making some nice adjustments to our pitching projections too. So if you're a Run Pure Sports subscriber, our guy Captain leads up our projections. We have JT Hayes, Steve Boynton, have been reviewing, kind of, we could call it like a little committee, have been helping out Captain quite a bit from a high level, side of things. And pitching's been more volatile this year than what we've seen in years past. So having those projections dialed in has been really nice for us over here at Run Pure Sports.
Yeah, so
we're getting a lot of Dylan Cease, Tyler Wells. That's interesting. It gets a tough Angels team right there. But again, it's a 4-game slate. This is a base build, and the base build is kind of our research build. We want to see what's popping. Where is the ownership going to be on this slate? I kind of agree with this. Like, just on the surface, the White Sox bats, they're starting to heat up. I like them against a lefty who they get on the mound today. And then, the Rays seems like it's a nice spot for them as well. And, the Orioles. And so that's kind of where I was thinking some of the chalk might be. And then Dylan Cease as an SB1 option. Which we're seeing that. We're seeing what, 80? Well, walk us through the team stats in our research build.
Yeah, no, I mean, you nailed it. So, 82% Tampa Bay. I think they are definitely going to be the chalk here on this slate. Ownership projections tend to support that. I think, White Sox you'll see mixed in there. Nationals bats as kind of a salary relief option. Mets have a decent team total as well. Very clear. I mean, there's 8 teams playing baseball today. There's 4 of them really popping here in this base build, and then there's 4 that are not. So I think right off the bat, you immediately can kind of see the leverage stack opportunities with Miami, LA, Cleveland, and Baltimore here. Baltimore is an interesting one. I think there are going to be selective one-offs that are going to be pretty popular on that team. We see Santander popping up here in some of these top builds here. A couple other guys that I do think as one-offs are going to be a little more popular, but the stack might be a little bit of a different way to get different there. And then, Cease. What's interesting here, I mean, I would say far and away, I would expect him to be the chalkiest option. Our ownership projections seem to indicate that as well. But you see in the Sabersim projection base build, Tyler Wells, you say 500 salary projected, very similar, popping in more of those builds here and at a lower ownership. So I think you can almost see the cards here where the way that Sabersim is going to end up handling this slate with the Sabersim projections here, fading Cease a bit once we run the actual tournament build at the expense of getting more Tyler Wells there, just because those guys are projected similarly. So,
my one concern with Tyler Wells, not like really a guy that you want to attack if you can, avoid doing so. 4.8 xFIP, a decent 22% strikeout rate. The problem with him is his fly ball rate is quite high. So, Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, a couple guys that could get to him in this lineup. But really interesting. Can we look at what the RPS ones are doing? If you're a member and if you have access to both, what I would do. Let's just say I'm an hour before the slate starting. The first thing I would do is I'd run the space build like we're doing right here. I would compare. Look to see where Saber's at. Look to see where RPS projections are at, and I would pull up a Word document and I would just start to make some notes. I would say, okay, Sabersim is here, RPS is here. Now the thing with projections that I do in baseball, I like pitching projections, and that helps me to figure out what my pitching pool is going to look like. When it comes to hitting, I like taking a little bit more control over that. As far as what teams I want to stack up. Once I figure out what teams I really want to stack up, then I let the projection Sabersim do its thing. And you can easily do that. We're going to show you when we walk through this process how we can do that using Sabersim in the steps 1, 2, and 3 part of the process.
Yeah, so we've got this build here pulled up. I'll switch this over. This is an important step. I'll note this as well here. If you're following along, running the base builds with us, it's important to switch that projection, that's sorting, over to projected score, just so you can actually see what the top lineups are. We're not caring about ownership just yet in the process here. So this is really interesting right off the bat. I actually did want to touch on this on the Sabersim. We've got Perez here now showing up as the top pitcher with the RPS projections.
Yeah, Yori Perez. Yori Perez is he's a 20-year-old phenom, throws with heat. He has this just deadly 4-seam slider combo that you see some of these times. And I try to shout them out every time, but JT Hayes, he's actually a pitcher, and not like major league or anything like that, but he's in some leagues and stuff. He knows pitching really well. So does Steve Boynton and obviously Draft Cheat. These guys got me into doing these deep dives into pitchers. Like I did one on Dylan Cease today, but I dove into Yori Perez, and this kid looks like a stud. It's his second start. He looked pretty good in his first start, and you got to like the matchup here against the Nationals.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is going to be one of kind of the main opportunities to take a stand one way or the other here, because we've got 2 different models here at our disposal that are taking the other side. In the Sabersim build, we saw Washington actually popping up in some of the top cash optimals as salary relief bats. In an opportunity here where you've got a young pitcher here, there's volatility there. On the flip side, I mean, this guy's clearly got good stuff. The Run Pure projections have him projected about 4 points higher here. So I think this is just a good opportunity to take a stand one direction or the other here, and on a 4-game slate, kind of make a decision there. So interesting. Cease popping.
I love that comment. Yeah, yeah. I love that comment. And here's the thing. I'm running. So, just throw a tidbit out there. Like, I'm running Yuri Perez and Dylan Cease as my SP1, SP2 combo. You can, on this slate, if you're multi-entering, I'm just running one since we're doing the show. I don't want to be, multitasking too much. You can make the argument of stacking against both of those guys. I know my guy DC is stacking up the Guardians. Just looking at what you were showing us before, you could make a case for the Nationals. That's going to be a way to get very contrarian on a short slate, because I think Yuri Perez is going to get some ownership today. You kind of have to think that. So that's one way. It's a 4-game slate, and leverage has a ton of value on these slates too. So anytime you can get a very low and stacked, it's going to have some interest for me in large field tournaments.
Yeah, and I mean, we flip over to the team stacks here, and a similar situation, right? Tampa Bay obviously looking like that chalk here. The White Sox showing up quite a bit as well. But you get an opportunity for 2 other low-owned stacks here. If you're looking, I think the main key to this slate here is you've got to pick one of those teams that's not the top 4, or pick 2 of them and figure out how you're going to work them into your lineups here. So Sabersim offers Washington up as an option there as leverage against an inexperienced pitcher. On the flip side here, we've got the RPS projections, Miami and LA against Wells, just like you mentioned here, as opportunities there of getting a little bit different.
I'm kind of surprised in these base builds that we ran that we're not getting more Orioles in our lineups. I like this lineup they ran out. But you got Hayes leading off, Rushman. I think he's one of the best center options on the slate. Mountcastle. I like what I'm seeing here. A decent lineup there. Jorge Mateo has been awesome. The bottom gets a little thin, but Tyler Anderson hasn't been great. 6'3" xFIP, struggle with the fly balls, hard hits. I like this Orioles team a little bit against this lefty.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing you get out of these base builds is, if there's a team that you like and you want to get some exposure to, if you're not seeing them in the projections on either Sabersim or the RPS, it's a good sign that it's time to give that team a bump. I think maybe, when we start jumping and looking at team totals or making some projection updates, this is probably the first team that we want to give a little boost to because, our research is leading us that direction.
So let's go back. Let's here's something I've been playing around with a little bit.
Yeah.
And, I want your thoughts too. My process isn't perfect yet at all with Sabersim. We actually have some really fun content coming out. Jordan, I haven't even told you about this, but I got Captain doing a little 20 max series that we're documenting. So what Captain's doing is he's maxing out the $4 20 max every night. We're documenting everything, where he's documenting what rules he's using. And he's the rules behind this whole thing is taking his top 3 to 5 pitchers. So having a pool limited to 5 pitchers and our stacks limited to no more than 5 stacks. And then using the settings in Sabersim to help guide us. And he almost shipped the other night too. And we're only on night, I think 4 or 5 of doing this. So it's been a ton of fun. We're probably going to have this out in a week or so. We wanted at least like maybe 8 to 10 days of data to do this. So still like a small sample, but we're trying to help that person out that if you got $80 a night that you want to put into DFS, that's your budget. We're trying to help you find a really viable strategy that you can deploy to give you an edge. And so that's something we're working on behind the scenes over here. But as far as like me and kind of what I've been doing right now, my process, I mean, you kind of know what my process is, Jordan. I go game by game. I define my pitching pool. I've been doing these deep dives that we've been talking about, but then I really like to, teams seem to like get hot and cold, and I'm more of a believer in that. And we all have our different, thoughts with all of this. And, but whenever a team's starting to get hot, I'm usually keying in on those guys. And so I'll go through the projected lineup, and then when the actual lineup hits, and I'll see who's profiling very well against those pitchers. And I just give them slight bumps to their projection. That's one little way that I kind of guide this to add some bias to my builds with these stacks. What are you doing on this first screen when you're preparing your builds, to get everything set up for a slate.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things that I definitely like to mess with here, and it's pretty quick every time, is going to this stack types tab, and I just like to have a little bit of control over what stack types I want to play. I think pretty much anybody playing baseball DFS has stack types they want. There are a few different ways in Sabersim to do this. I think this is the easiest. So a lot of times I'll go through, I'll just turn them all off, and I'll start adding the stack types in that I'm willing to play. And on a 4-game slate, I'm going to be actually pretty flexible with this here because it's, there's only 8 teams playing. It's harder for one of those teams to have, the 10 runs you might necessarily need from a 5 stack to pay off. So I will play.
Jordan, on that note, here's another argument that you can make. How many times do we see on these slates lately where you get a guy who hits a home run, gets a stolen base, then maybe he hits a single after his home run, then gets a stolen base. I've seen a home run, a double, 2 stolen bases, and you get that, and you get a monster score. And so, like, by there's times where it's like if you full stack a spot, you may get that guy, and you might get 0 production out of everyone else. And if you have 2 of those guys on a slate, and if you just have them in your lineup, you can get different. So while I prefer, and I typically run 5-man stacks in most things that I do, I'm not going to talk someone off of if they want to get a little bit different and they want to kind of go the other direction. Maybe it's a 4-2, maybe it's a 3-3-2 right there. I mean, you can get a little creative, especially on these 4-game smaller slates where you're just trying to capture as much upside as you possibly can.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of times the way I kind of think about my stacks is how many uncorrelated players am I willing to play rather than like what is the biggest stack I want to play. So for a 4-game slate, I might be willing to play up to 3 uncorrelated players, true one-offs from each other in the lineup. That would allow the 5 stacks in as well. I don't always love these 4 with 4 one-off stacks. I think you're asking for a lot to go right. But on these smaller slates, like 4 games or less, I actually don't hate these 3-3-2s and 3-3s as well. If every team ends up scoring, around their total, maybe we get a team that scores 6 runs. Very easy to see how a 3-3 pays off, right? You're playing an Orioles Mets 3-3 or something like that here with 2 players that are just one-offs here. Both teams score 6 runs. They're the highest scoring teams on the slate. I've had a lot of success with these kinds of stacks. So this is a small slate thing. Definitely not something I'm doing on like 12-game baseball slates, but I kind of like those as well. So I do like to set my stack types there right up front.
I like it.
One other thing I will just generally take a look at here, because I think it's interesting, is this adjusted ownership column, which is basically it's going to take the Sabersim ownership projection and then adjust it based on how that player does in our sims. So if they are overperforming, right, if they're low variance and performing well relative to their ownership, we'll treat that ownership projection as less. It counts for less. But if they're underperforming, they're high variance, the ownership projection counts for more. So basically, if this is higher than this number, we think they're bad chalk. If it's lower than this number, we think they're good chalk. Really interesting. You almost never see this here. Dylan Cease has an adjusted ownership higher than his ownership projection, which on a 4-game slate, he's the top arm on the slate. We're actually thinking he's going to be a little bit over-owned. So you don't see that a lot for pitchers here. I'm already talking myself into a Cease fade or being under on him here. The hitters, we've got a situation where Tampa Bay here looking like very much that top stack, very over-owned according to adjusted ownership here, a team that I'm probably going to be getting away from as well.
Yeah, very good. I mean, my take on Cease, yeah, you can definitely fade him. You can stack against him. I think that would be my preference. The same thing, too. If I was fading Yuri Perez, I think I would want to stack against him as well. And when you do that, you get what I call kind of double leverage, whereas we know Cease is going to be popular. He's probably going to be very high owned. The people playing him, they're not playing the other side. They're not playing the Guardians. What happens when he gets blown up? You're leapfrogging over all of the people, like 60, 65%, who own Cease. So it's kind of that double leverage type of effect. So I love that strategy, especially in larger field stuff. However, I am on Cease today. I think his last start looked pretty nice. I did a deep dive earlier. So his velocity has been down year over year on the season. When you look at his slider four seam, that's kind of his main main combo there, but it looked good in his last start against the Astros. He generated a bunch of whiffs, so he's missing a lot of bats. He had a really nice called strikes swing percentage. I think Cease is going to be fine. But again, if you're playing the contrarian route, which I love on these slates, yeah, you can fully stack against them. I can definitely endorse that. Should we go through real quick? So we're locking in 15 minutes. Let's add some really quick bias to this. Pull up the White Sox, and I'll just give you a very high level of kind of what I do, just to add some bias to some of these hitters. Luis Robert, he's been hitting really good. He's been hitting lefties really well. I'm going to bump him up. Berger, I bumped up too. And Hanser Alberto, I've always liked him more against lefties than righties. I bumped him up just a little bit. And I always like Timmy Anderson leading off, so I'm fine bumping him up. The Rays, I want to bump them up too, 1 through 9. I always just want them. This team is a beast. They're an absolute beast. I think it's always fine in a spot against a pitcher that we can target to bump them up a little bit, because I think they're a team that you're going to see them on winning lineups. They're a great baseball team, good hitters top to bottom. They're a team that we should always be considering. And then the other team I really liked, and I love seeing that we didn't get them in a lot of our base builds, was the Orioles. I like them against this lefty. Like I said, I like when Mountcastle's leading off. Rushman, you got Hayes. Mateo is going to be tough to get to. His price is way up there. But again, that his price is up there. That's going to likely limit his ownership. So I would be bumping him up as well. Let's run our build, and let's do it so I'm just doing a 3 max today. You can use whatever settings, but I want you to talk, because I'm still learning this too. The last section there in step 3, how we should be organizing our builds. So I want you to talk through what you're doing in that step 3 part of this process.
Cool. Yeah. Let's get this built here. We'll build it for the 20 max settings. I think that's interesting especially for the challenge that the captain's doing here. It'll give us an opportunity to see some additional lineups here. So we'll give this just a second to run. And yeah, we'll talk about this step 3 here.
And I apologize. Friggin' allergies. 'Tis the season. Like right now and then come fall, it always kills me. So like my eyes always looks like I'm stoned and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's been getting me this year too.
Yeah.
I normally don't have it too bad, but this year it feels like has just been brutal. So
I see all this like pollen and stuff just floating around in the air right now. And it's like, oh man, it just kills me. I got to move to somewhere where we don't have allergies. That's where I got to move to.
So we've got the build pulled up here. A couple things that I always like to go through here. So first of all, what is likely to happen here on any given slate you're running this is you're going to run this and you're going to see something like this, right? At this point, we've got 4 pitchers in our pool, but we are 95% on Tyler Wells. I did use the Sabersim projections as the base here, so we didn't do too much with the pitchers, but 95% Wells, right? We're at 85% Rays stacks, 51% in our pool. We've got actually a lot of Guardians showing up here as well. That's the Cease fade showing up here a little bit, but you're going to be very concentrated. So to me, what I always like to do is to just tone that down a little bit. I think there's a couple different ways you can do that. If you want to tone down a particular team, totally fine to go in here and set the max exposure. I love doing this with min uniques. I mentioned it every single week here. So I like the idea of slowly kind of ramping this up a little bit and letting these exposures come down naturally using the min uniques to diversify here. So that's often the first thing I like to do is just turn that up a little bit, get some diversity in there, and then go through. I go right to left every single time here. Stack types, team stacks. You can look at game stacks if you want. Not always the most important thing to me in baseball. And then players. So I want to go through and I want to check out these stacks here. Make sure they look the way I like. We've got one lineup as a 3-3-2 showing up. I chose to leave that in the pool. Maybe we don't want that here. Very easy to go in and now just remove that here. So we've got
what does that little button do right there that you clicked?
This is the auto apply exposures button. So by default, this is off. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. I always turn this on. If you are doing a ton of changes and you don't want to wait for Sabersim to update every single time, you might want to leave this off, make all your changes, then click apply once, let Sabersim process all that. I go kind of change by change and see the impact that has on my lineups. So I like to leave this on so I can see it as I'm going here. But we can come back to the stack types here. So maybe we don't, Tampa Bay, maybe we're okay with Tampa Bay being our top stack, but we want about 50% instead. Now we can kind of go in and start working through that. Maybe we're fine with the Cleveland angle here, but we don't want 45% Cleveland. Maybe we match. I use this as a big indicator for me. This to me this is the percentage of lineups that have that stack or player or anything in your entire pool. So if you're looking at a team and this looks like too much or too little, I like to get a little bit closer to this. So maybe we match Cleveland to 15% of our pool instead. Still get some negative leverage on Cease. We're just not half of our lineups playing maybe the most negative leverage team on the slate here. So, and then you can go over to players, right? And this is a good opportunity, I think, to curate that pitcher pool as well. Tyler Wells, right? Similar situation here. Maybe we want some exposure there. Do we want to be all in on Tyler Wells here? Maybe not. 45% showing up in our pool here, still getting over the field. Maybe we do about 50% there, right? And I let this pool exposure end up guiding a lot of my decision-making process here as I'm going through and building lineups. Cease is a similar guy as well. We're getting 45% in the pool. He's going to be 55% owned. Maybe we do want to be on the underside of that, but 30% is a little light. We can kind of meet in the middle between those two there and get a little bit more exposure to Cease. And you see, this is the best part about having 1,500 lineups in your pool, right? I'm making all these adjustments, and it's just finding a new set of 20 pretty quickly every time I go along. So that's really what I do. Step 3, come in here. I set my min uniques. I increase this a little bit as well. And then I go right to left, stack types, team stacks, players, basically every single time.
So one question I've just gotten occasionally every now and then is what happened to the ownership slider? How is that factored into our builds? And I still don't have the perfect answer. I tell people, well, when you're organizing your builds over on that right-hand side, so you can see I believe MLB small slate is selected. Yeah. So one thing I really don't have is like a perfect answer to tell people. I say you can mess around with those settings in there. And if you're someone that is like me, that changes the projections quite a bit, sometimes I'll just run it by top projected score too, while still governing things kind of on a macro level. But usually I am using the small slate, 100 to 1K or 1K to 10K, 10K to 50K. Can you kind of talk people through that and what you guys are doing with those settings?
Yeah, so let's talk about the ownership fade first. So why is it gone, right? So ownership fade, the slider, was a decent way to handle ownership in your builds. It had really one big problem, and the problem is that it was adjusting the outcome of our individual simulations based on player ownership. So it was taking ownership into account, which sounds like a good thing. The problem with that, though, is it could adjust simulated outcomes to the point where you were building lineups based on projections that were never going to happen. Right? That you could get lineups that actually weren't even showing up as optimals in our sims. So what we changed here instead of it being something that happens before the build, now we build the lineups. When the lineups get built, this 1,500 lineup pool, they're not built caring about ownership at all. They're built as the optimals for different sets of sims of the way that the slate could play out. Then when you actually sort your lineups, and that's what AP's talking about over here under Saber Score here, we are going to sort the lineups based on their projection, their 99th or 95th percentile. What do they score when they really score a lot? And then ownership as a negative factor here. So we're taking lineups that are optimal for sims. Yeah, go ahead.
Would you guys ever consider allowing someone to have their own custom thing in there where they could control their own weights? Or do you think it's like, is that an idea that you guys have considered?
Yeah.
Because pull that up real quick and let's just take a look at those. And this would maybe be more so for like an advanced user, but it's like, if I really want to, maybe it was a toggle in here where you could yourself adjust the weight. And then maybe it's my own thing. I'd call it my AP model or whatever, where I want to be fully against, ownership. Is that something you guys...
Yeah, you can on Sabersim Pro. So AP, I think you and I need to hook up here after and talk about getting Pro out to the people on the RPS subscription here. So yes, absolutely, that is something. That's in theory, that's not going to save, so it won't work. But yeah.
The other thing too is maybe the problem with that too is you could use it wrong. Like if you adjust something way outside of certain parameters and maybe it just completely messes stuff up. Who knows? But
in the meantime, all of these are here for a reason, right? So for a small slate for the contest we picked, we're going to pick the best one that we think is the right one to use. But if you wanted, you can look at these here. If we look at a large slate, right? What's going to happen here is the ownership factor is going to go down. So if you run your build and you're looking at this and like, wow, this is really fading ownership. I don't know if I want 50% Guardians and no Cease. We can come over here instead and pick a different score that's going to be a little less aggressive with ownership. And you see Cease bumps up now to 75%. So while you can't directly change the weights to every factor for any given one of these right now, you can pick and look at different ones and pick one here that is different. And we've actually talked as well. I think it would be a good idea of just changing the names of these so they're more descriptive of what they do rather than what they are for. It's kind of a double-edged sword, I think, for some people, knowing that, I'm playing a large slate. This contest is more useful. For other people, I think it would be more useful to just know what the differences are between them. But yeah.
Or even if the cursor goes over it, and if you had a box
that's a good idea.
Popped up and just said, hey, here's what's happening here, where I think that would help out quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So anyway, that's what I'm looking at here. The one thing I'll add is a lot of times, if you go through and start editing things, always good to kind of go back through and double check and make sure that, once you start changing player exposure, that you still like your stack types, your team stacks, and so on. But that's what I'm focusing on here on the build screen most of the time.
Yeah, I like it. I think we can wrap up baseball and we can move over to NBA. I think the slate is interesting for tonight, the Showdown slate. I will say just if you're still dialing in your lineups right now, I really like Yuri Perez against the Nationals. Just not that great of a lineup. Again, I do like the case. If you're targeting a large field like the $15, what is it, probably 50K up top, I would consider like a 5-man Nationals or a 5-man Guardians stack against these two chalky pitchers. I'm eating the chalk. I like the Orioles righties against Tyler Anderson, who hasn't been that good on the season. And then I like the White Sox. I think these bats are starting to wake up a little bit. I like them against lefties. Logan Allen hasn't been that good. He hasn't been terrible, but hasn't been that good. So I like that spot for the White Sox. That's where I'm at on this baseball slate.
Cool.
All right. So this series, I think, is so interesting, and it's so much different than what we saw last night because just look at what let me pull up my NBA stuff real quick. Like if we just there's no projections out there that are going to have a proper projection on Jokic. I mean, what's he averaging in the playoffs? And I'm talking the entire playoffs, like 75. Like this guy is putting up monster. All right. So 89 last game, 74, 73, 76, 81, 73, 56, 80. So you're talking in his last, probably we'll call it 10 games. His worst game is a 56. Every other game he has 70 or more. And what is the projection on him? And this is
65.
I'm not picking on you guys. This is everyone. And we've had this conversation before. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me, and we could go through and we could go to a different player. We could pick out Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray has some massive floor games. He obviously has some awesome games there too, but he has so much more variance in his outcomes. Whereas Jokic is just putting up monster number after monster number. And what I saw in that game is he took AD right on. And the Lakers have a problem. Like they ran the same play like 3 plays in a row, and it's really impressive. And the play looked different each time. The first time they ran it, little screen, get Jokic in space. Jokic one-on-one with AD. He took him right to the rim, and AD couldn't stop. The next play, same setup. What did Jokic do? He set his guy up and racked up an assist. So Jokic has his hand in the game in every single play, whether it's getting a rebound, an assist, or scoring a basket. We just got to be very aggressive on him. I love what you did right there. Bump him up by like 10 points. I think that's appropriate. And so, I mean, what's your take on that, especially like with Jokic? And because I'm just going to keep plugging him in at captain, and it's hard to do because you gotta punt somewhere. And
Yeah.
what was awesome with what K-Falik and Rubio did, they took a 0 and they were fine with it because the math worked out to throw in a 1K guy in there with a Jokic captain build with I forget what that build was, but it was awesome to see.
Yeah, I think he's essentially the only viable captain here. I mean, you see when we give him, I gave him his 75th percentile, which I agree with your take. I think it's appropriate. It's going to take his captain projection to 111 points. I mean, what any other player has to do to make up that gap in raw scoring is almost impossible. Then when you combine that about getting the other 5 pieces right, I think it's just very tough. As we're talking about this game here right off the bat, I do want to mention it's early in the day here. As we've gone through the playoffs, our NBA projections have changed a lot throughout the day. One that I think we'll talk about in a second, but particularly will change is we've got D'Angelo Russell projected for 34 minutes with Hachimura projected for 20. That was obviously an adjustment we saw mid-game here to kind of change the way that the Lakers were just really effectively the starting lineup of the team changed throughout the game here. I would expect that will change throughout the day here as well. So couple things to keep an eye on here. It's early in the day, but yeah,
that's a great mention too. Because if we pick up on that right away, the three guard lineup that they were deploying against the Warriors is not going to work against this Nuggets team. So you saw the adjustment. We'll see that. So who does that hit? That hits Lonnie Walker. I would be under on Lonnie Walker. They continue to lean on Schroeder defensively, and just his decision making is huge. Reeves has just been a stud. The odd man out in every team right now, they want to take away D'Angelo Russell. So I think, and when you look at the Nuggets, again, I'm on Lakers for this series, but I'm going to be happy either way because I love the Nuggets, the Jokic. Like, I would love to see him win a championship. This team looks so motivated right now to do so. It's a tough matchup too when they can bring Bruce Brown off the bench to just make it tough on guys like D'Lo and Reeves. So like it's going to be tough, but I would be worried about the backcourt a little bit. I like the Rui adjustment, so bumping him up, and then I think it's a good matchup too for LeBron and AD. They're going to have to put up big numbers here, and it's going to be a back and forth thing. Like, I don't think Jokic can stop AD, and I don't think AD can stop Jokic.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I want to project Jokic higher than AD, but I want to be over on the studs here. I want to be over on LeBron. He was 1 assist away from a triple-double last game. AD had a monster game. So I want to be over on these guys. I want to be aggressive with their projection, but not as aggressive as we are with Jokic. Like, Jokic, I want very, very, high up there. And then it's about, who could be that impact guy who is super cheap. This is my first look today, but who do we have that's super cheap? Let's look at these cheapies.
Yeah, it gets tough at this point in the year. I mean, I actually think I'm even under on Jared Vanderbilt here at 2.6. I might be even lower.
So let's pull up all the 1K
players.
Guys that could potentially even get any type of run. So that would be
1K here.
I saw Gabriel. I mean, maybe.
Yeah. I think if you start playing this angle, and I do think there's an angle here. So you had game 1 plays very close down the stretch. LeBron plays 42 minutes. AD plays 42 minutes. Game 2 here, the Lakers are coming back at altitude after 2 nights of rest and playing again. I think there's a chance similar to what we kind of saw with the Suns series, where if the Nuggets do get out to a hot start, I don't know if Darvin Ham is going to push these guys to 42 minutes again in an effort to win game 2. I could see a situation here. It's a similar spread as game 1 where they get ready to play in LA in game 3. And there's an opportunity where maybe some of the Lakers bench gets a little more run towards the end of the game. I don't know. Maybe my homerism is showing there a little bit here, but I think if you're looking for a low salary guy, that's the angle.
I think their strategy all along, though, has been they got to steal one of these games. And it's just so important to do so. So I still think that, and LeBron knows, I mean, they're one series away from getting to that championship series. So, Danny, good point. Maybe Thompson gets another shot, just another body to throw at Jokic. I don't think it works. But again, and what's the likelihood that we see another 0 be in the optimal? Maybe that is, the wrong approach to take, but I still want to see those builds. I would also say like Christian Braun, maybe a little high. I'd rather be a little under on him. Just not a great producer. Maybe it's let's just see what some of these builds look like when we just bumped up mainly Jokic. And let's see if any other adjustment. I like MPJ's fine.
I'm gonna, one I like here, and I'm kind of predicting the chess move for Mike Malone. I kind of like Aaron Gordon in this game. Yep. So the adjustment they made, they put AD on Aaron Gordon really to kind of just shadow the paint here and assist with the double team on Jokic here. And Aaron Gordon basically didn't move in the entire fourth quarter here, just kind of sat kind of stagnant, made it very easy for AD to move around on defense. I expect Malone to get Gordon involved in the offense a little bit more just to make Anthony Davis have to move around on defense here. I don't think they're going to be running sets for him, but I think they're going to be asking him to be involved more in the pick and roll, maybe get some open kind of pick and pop type action there, just because I think that's the natural response to the change from Darvin Ham. So I don't hate the idea of giving him maybe even just a couple points of a bump here, just because I think that's at least going to be the first adjustment that we see tonight.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I still want the other thing too is when doing this, I really want our captains to be one of these studs. It's just anytime it's like when Jokic goes for 75 plus, like how likely is it he's going to be captain, or like 80 plus like he has been? With how the calculation comes out, it just seems so likely he's going to be in that captain spot. And that's why, like that closeout game, the Celtics, I ran Tatum captain. I think the last few series too, I've been running Jokic captain, all that I can. This last game, I just like, you know what? I'm going to try to take a stand and get a little different. I went Jamal Murray captain. Murray had an awesome game, and I had all the right pieces in there. I didn't even cash because Jokic captain was just like that optimal. Then I think it was AD, and then it was I forget who, but. Let's go to the Lakers side real quick.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of other adjustments that they could possibly make. One thing I do like about Darvin Ham is he's not afraid to make some adjustments, whether it's like go down a little bit. Like maybe it's like Malik Beasley. Is he 1K or is he?
Yeah, he is 1K.
Right. So let's give him like 5.5 or something, or like 6, or just like that. Yeah, just because it's a 1K guy who he at least was a starter, and even though he's been not good at all, at least he's been a starter at one point. Maybe Darvin Ham, former player. I mean, Malik Beasley was he was a Nugget. They traded him to the Wolves, and then obviously the Wolves to the Lakers. Maybe lets him run with some revenge factor there. Again, I just want to see does he land in that utility spot. Let's run this and just see what it looks like.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and it's interesting your comment on Jokic captain. I mean, I think the other way maybe you get somebody outside of Jokic and the captain is both teams are playing a tight rotation. So the 1K player, the really cheap players are not there. And the Nuggets do not overcome the defensive adjustment. So you get Jokic. I mean, they're not going to stop him completely, but you get a somewhat more pedestrian game from him. Maybe he scores, does 60 points get it done? For him in the captain spot as the most expensive player. I think if you're doing that approach, you almost don't save enough going down to AD. I think you have to hope it's like Jamal Murray or LeBron's game at the captain spot. And by not using Jokic in the captain, you free up. Hey, this is interesting here right off the bat too. 60% AD.
Yeah, and that's going to be so much of a pricing thing. Now, here's the other thing is like we probably do not want 2 1K players in there. I mean, your risk of taking 2 zeros is that's not going to get it done. And so
look at this though, 60% Beasley at a 5-point projection. So let's do this. Let's show a feature real quick here. So I'm going to just eliminate these. So in a build, which is pretty cool. So we'll take Malik Beasley and we'll take Gabriel is the other one that's projected here. And I'm just going to trash every lineup that has both of them. So we'll get rid of those.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that. Cool.
Yeah.
Learning
Fill that
new.
back up. And now we have 20. So now we know we won't at least have both of them. But now we're talking Malik Beasley and Vanderbilt in the same lineup. So it gets tough paying. Basically, if you're going to play Davis and Jokic in the same lineup with either at captain, you're going to have to get a little weird. I mean, this is a 4-9-8 salary lineup that has those two guys in it.
Yeah, let me look up what that. I'll have to look up what Rubio's build was. I don't remember it off the top. Do you remember what the optimal was last game?
I don't know. But I mean, yeah, looking at these, like, it kind of, if you end up, especially once you include Jamal and LeBron in there as well, if you're doing like Jokic and AD plus one of those guys, like I think Rui is going to be insanely popular tonight. He's 3-6. He's going to project so well. I think he's going to be extremely popular.
The optimal was AD captain, Jokic, Murray, KCP, Rui, and then Tristan Thompson, 0 basically, 1K 0. So, I may not be too far off with looking at Jamal Murray or one of these other guys at that captain spot, just from a pure price standpoint, especially if you see, like, you got to think that LeBron James had to be somewhat close to being towards that. Like, if he gets that triple double plus a little bit more, you got to think he would have been right up there as well. So much of it comes down to price, and I think in like, if you're running one build, you could get creative with like a Jokic lineup. But when you're talking, what's his captain? So 18.9, and LeBron is 16.8. Jamal Murray 14.1. Is there anyone else that could be viable, or do you think it's likely to come from one of those four? The only other thing that I could think of is there a cheap guy like maybe a Bruce Brown? I don't think the price is low enough, though, where if he had like an awesome day and you jam in all of these studs. I don't even know if that's possible or not, but that would be another thing that I would consider. I'm not seeing it. Like, are you seeing it? Like, I think it has to be one of these four. Is what it looks like.
I think this is the other way this works out, and I don't know if it works out often. Rui is so cheap. If he's going to play 30 minutes, I think a Rui captain lineup can get it done. And I think that's probably also the best way to use him in a way that's unique, because I honestly, I think he could be 65%, 70% owned in the utility spot tonight because he's going to project so well. When you play him at captain, you get to do something like, I mean, this is just an example of a lineup, but you get to play Jokic, AD, Porter, Gordon, and KCP. That kind of construction is not going to be popular anywhere else. Here, you get Rui, you play Malik Beasley, who we gave the manual projection, you play every other stud, Jokic, AD, LeBron, in this case, MPJ. So if this game really shoots out and you have massive points from everybody playing in this game, I think this is the only way you're going to be able to capture all those points here is with a guy like him at captain. So, but that's showing up as optimal in a pool of 500 here, about 3% of the time here. I don't even know, that might feel a little bit high to me. Aaron Gordon, we gave a manual projection bump to as well. He's showing up about 4% of the time as the optimal captain. But I think if it's anybody, I think it's going to be one of these top, really three. I don't even know if Jamal fits in that list to me in the same way.
Yeah, and then what we're getting at is you could, like, one thing to, like, if you're running a bunch of lineups, you can really condense down your captain pool, which is what I like to do if we have an idea, because it's like, part of this is like a math question. It's like KCP is 6'4", and he's typically raw score independent. So could he be captain viable? I mean, he would have to have one of the most efficient games that we've ever seen at 6'4". I'd almost rather go up to like MPJ at 7'2", or even Reeves, whereas Rui is 3'6", and we're talking utility pricing. So when you talk about that captain spot, I get where you're saying if you're punting, he could make sense as a true punt. Other than that, for me, it's who can put up 50 plus, 55 plus. It's Jokic, LeBron, AD, Jamal, and I don't like Reeves. I don't 7'4". Aaron Gordon. I mean, you could make the case 6'8". Utility pricing. I mean, it's thin though. Like, I love these studs. And LeBron is kind of the interesting one. If he needs a triple-double, though, which is the problem. And it's like, can he get there? So I think the safest route is all right, let's go back to this home screen real quick. What if we play your blowout angle? Let's play the Denver just smashes them, Darvin Ham. So let's customize these a little bit. Let's go to the Lakers side. Or no, yeah, let's start with the Lakers side. Let's bring everyone down, all the main guys, AD, LeBron. Let's bring them all down. Like under 50, yeah. Yep. Reeves, let's bring down. Let's just bring everyone down. Let's bring some of these bench guys up a little bit. We're doing this really quickly, but it's like we're trying to create what would a true blowout look like. Maybe it's where Beasley gets in there. Maybe it's where Lonnie gets some extra run. Who else? Gabriel. Maybe Winnie Gabriel gets in there, gets some extra run. And we don't need to go too crazy because we want to be higher on the Nuggets side. Then let's go to the Nuggets side. What I've typically seen in these blowouts is even when the one team they wave the white flag, you're still getting 2 to 3 sometimes minutes from the other team starters because they want to make sure they close out that game. And so Malone for sure. Let's keep Jokic high. Let's bump Murray up a little bit. Let's just bump them all like a true. Maybe KCP just leave just a little bump. Yeah, that's fine. Bruce. And then the value pieces, let's bump down. Okay. Because how I envision if they blow them out, our stars are producing, and the stars on the other side are not producing. I want to see what this looks like.
Yeah, let's give this a look. I saw a question from AK Knowledge here in chat. Does highlighting every lineup to trash those players do anything different than just unchecking them from your player pool? I can show this again with this build here. So what we actually did in that last one is we filtered by lineups with Beasley and Gabriel in a build and trashed just those. So it is a little bit different. Unchecking them from the pool would just remove every lineup with either player and just get rid of all of those. What I did was the combination of players we actually trashed there. So a little bit different there. But let's take a look here. So, I mean, blowout
sort by highest projected too.
Yeah. Okay, and let's look at the top 50 here, top 10.
I like this build right there. I mean, so this would be a LeBron 80 fade. Just jamming in Jokic at captain. And that's the or this one too. I mean, that's full on blowout. You get this is where potentially a 5, I don't run a lot of 5-1s. If the game pans out like you think, where you're playing at altitude, they just ran 42 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's not like we bumped LeBron and AD down to a range to where it's just like they have nothing in there. They still have 48, 47. So we're not taking them completely out. It's a floor slate, absolute floor slate. That's what you would need for this to hit. I think some of these builds are really interesting where you're getting those key pieces. And how does this work? And why does this work with the Nuggets, in my opinion? Jokic can get it done in so many different ways. He gets his guys involved. So he has his hands in every single play. So he can rack up assists. So it's almost like there's so much correlation there. When you think of baseball, you almost get that with Jokic. Because if he chucks it out to Aaron Gordon, who hits a corner three, or Michael Porter Jr., who hits a corner three, you're getting the assist. You're also getting the 3-ball from those guys. And so you get that positive correlation between Jokic and almost all of the guys on his team. That's where 4-2s are interesting. A 5-1 full blowout, somewhat interesting. I might be on that tonight.
Yeah, it is. I think there's got to be something that you do that's a little bit different. I really do. I mentioned it before. I think one of the stands that I really like taking here is bumping up Rui, but I might only use him in the captain, especially if I'm playing 20 or so lineups. I think that is one spot where you can use a player who's kind of getting scripted into this series in a way that's going to make it a unique construction, because I think using him in the utility spot is not.
Or look, we've seen Darvin Ham run with these guys that are like Lonnie Walker. Lonnie Walker was non-existent until he had his moment.
Right.
What did Ham do? He let him run. He gave him that time. And so a lot of these showdown slates are going to try to be having that foresight to predict where could that adjustment come. And then the other part of it, where it's these guys got to, step up, hit shots. If they're not going to do that, then yeah, they're not going to be a good play. But that's why it's you can make multiple builds, build out a bunch of different scripts. Like tonight, I'm going to have a script. Like I'm going to run a series of like maybe 15 to 20 full-on Denver blowout scripts where it's like we're getting bench guys off. The studs, AD, LeBron, we're under on them. And then I'm going to run a script where it's somewhat similar to last game, but maybe it's LeBron captain. Maybe it's AD back at the captain spot. I'm definitely going to go back to Jamal Murray captain as well. And that's where I'm going to have my captain pool really defined. Jokic, Jamal Murray, AD, LeBron James. I like your Rui call. I think I'm going to include him in my captain pool, but that's going to be it. I don't think I'm going to include anyone else in there for what I'm doing. And I'm not maxing. I'm not playing 150. I'll probably run 30 to 50 builds, running different scripts like that. And that's just, part of what I do. But I like how these look, though. And I like your Nuggets tonight, even though I'm on. It's going to be tough sticking with this Lakers team if they lose tonight, which makes it a really interesting game. But, man, the Nuggets look good, and Jokic looks phenomenal.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I think that first quarter is going to tell a lot because the Lakers definitely figured something out in the second half, and I think the Nuggets were lucky to be up as much as they were to have that cushion, and there were a couple like circus shots that went in that the Nuggets were very lucky to hit as well. So I think we're going to see in the first quarter very much what the flow of the game is going to look like, at least until either coach adjusts again. So,
yes, sir. All right, Jordan. No, this was good. This was a ton of fun. As always, if you have any questions for Jordan or myself, or if there's anything that you want us to cover, never hesitate. Shoot me a DM, Discord, Twitter, in chat, wherever. We're always happy to help. Jordan, before we get out of here, is there anything new on the horizon that the people should be looking for?
Just continuing to work on making the product better. I've mentioned it a couple times. Got a big update coming. We will absolutely have to release some new content, maybe do a special stream for it when it is ready. So the team's working hard on that. But that is the big priority. Really, the goal of that is that it's just going to make everything a lot easier to use, simplify some things that have just been kind of long time confusing parts of the app. So, but other than that, we're just cranking away on our end.
All right. Very good. Very, very good. With that, for Jordan, I'm AP. Let's run here.